Good evening, Bears and Barretts. It's 9:30. It's Sunday night, and that means that it's time for the last episode of this season's Gersnet Weekly Podcast. We are live, fairly unscripted this week because we're just going to have a bit of a rabble, a bit of a talk in terms of the season overall, because obviously no game this weekend to discuss. So we've got as many people who have contributed to the pod over the whole season on, and we're just basically going to discuss a few things like how we felt the season went, player of the season, high points, low points, all that kind of stuff, and maybe have a wee look towards next season as well. So there's quite a few of us on tonight, so I'll get on to the introductions straight away. First of all, we've got Frankie the boss. How are you, Stuart?
I'm very well, thanks, mate. It's been my wife's 40th birthday this weekend, so I'm just sort of sobering up for yesterday, to be honest. But I'm off work tomorrow, so good night's sleep tonight will do the trick, and I'm sure you guys will help put me to sleep in it over the next hour.
Oh, dearie me, hi. Nothing like motivating your stuff, Stuart. Shocking. Also joining us tonight is co-host Ross Bennett. How are you, Ross?
Absolutely smashing, Colin. It's good to be back. I've been away for a few weeks, so it's lovely to be back on the show.
I believe you've been up for 37 hours straight.
I have. I've been away on holiday down in Africa, and I flew. The first flight was yesterday morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. We got back to Luxembourg today at about 10 o'clock. I'm absolutely wiped, and then I'm moving home back to London tomorrow. So as soon as this is done, I'm hitting my scratcher. I'm getting 6 hours sleep, and then I'm back to London. So it's a busy few days, but I wouldn't miss this for the world.
Yeah, you sound convincing there, I must admit. So it'll be me and yourself sort of co-hosting tonight. I think I'm taking the lead early doors, and then when I bore them all, you can take over and finish the job for me.
Aye, the super sub.
The super sub, yeah. I do all the work, you come on and take all the glory. That's kind of how super subs work, is it not?
Aye, that's fine by me.
Aye, I thought it would be. Aye. Anyway, right. Also joining us, we've got Graham, the sound guy, who's we never hear from him. He's always in the background, but he's here with us tonight. How are you, Graham?
I'm not bad, Colin. Thanks very much.
You sound absolutely wonderful. You're making my job a lot easier there by basically giving me no answer whatsoever.
That'll do you.
You've done it again. Brilliant. Right, okay. We've also got Pete. How are you, Pete, over in Germany?
Great. Not had exciting things like going to Africa, but just plugging away over here in Germany.
I'm assuming there must be some new tax avoidance scheme over in Africa, because that's kind of how Ross operates, is it not?
Aye, that's how I live my life, is trying to squirrel away from the tax. All the dollars that Frankie pays me for hosting this show, I like to have that away from the tax man. I take my lead from the Rangers board, really investing in EBTs.
I was about to say that.
They get paid, that kind of thing.
I heard that you were the one EBT that they've not caught up with yet, but we'll not go into that. You know what I mean? We'll just leave that on the side. Yeah. And also joining us, we've got David Fraser. How are you, David?
Not too bad, Colin. Thanks. Lovely day.
Hello. How are you? How's your weekend been without Rangers?
Well, fairly middling. It was pretty good yesterday, and it's been no bad today when Dundee Hibs cemented their championship status earlier on.
Well, I must admit, my day wasn't too bad yesterday either, although I was in Glasgow for a bit, and I did see a few colourful scenes afterwards. I was watching Back to the Future in concert, so they play the movie and a live orchestra in the room playing the music alongside it, so that was quite good. But I must admit, we had to stand in Queen Street Station for about 20 minutes at the back of 10, and it wasn't the best, I must admit, especially when my two kids there. So Glasgow was interesting last night. I think it was certainly green and white, that's for sure. But it wasn't all fun and games, I don't think. But anyway, having said that, enjoy today, like you, David. I really enjoyed that today. Sat and watched that and had a wee chuckle. But anyway, we'll get on to the point of the pod. A wee sort of review of the whole season. Stuart, I'll come to you first. Your overall views of the season. I mean, obviously Celtic done the treble and all that nonsense, right? But in my opinion, I think they kind of stumbled a wee bit towards the finish line in the league, and they've kind of, I suppose you could say, they've won it in and by that they deserve it. But I don't think it's been as convincing, certainly as the first one was under Brendan Rodgers. I thought they were a wee bit lucky last season as well. This one feels it's a treble, but it's not as convincing as previous ones. And even although we've ended the season, trophyless as such, I feel we've made strides this season. What about yourself?
Aye, we have. I mean, I think you've got to really look at this season in three parts. The first part was obviously pretty good. We made some good progress in Europe. Clearly had 3 or 4 qualifiers and then get into the group stages. And ultimately, it was disappointing that we didn't qualify. At that point, our domestic form wasn't too great either. I think we were looking for a sort of big December and we didn't really get it. We did finish strongly though, obviously by beating Celtic at home on the 29th of December. And from that point, you're thinking, this could be on here, because like you said, Celtic were less than impressive. Unfortunately, I think more than anything else, I think the Kidden-Beath game that was postponed, we were due to play them obviously a few days before Kilmarnock at Rugby Park, and that game got postponed because of the frosty pitch. And I think we went into the Kilmarnock game rather cold ourselves, unfortunately. And I think Gerrard made a mistake with his team selection, playing Davis and Defoe that night. Obviously, Defoe scored, so I may be wrong on that front, but it didn't work out. I mean, Joe Worrell's maybe to blame as much as anybody else. And at that point, sort of everybody's down in the dumps. But fortunately, we went on to finish the last sort of third, or certainly the final quarter of the season strongly again. And I think the fans' confidence was back up, and to beat Celtic again at Ibrox the other week there was fantastic. It really means we can go into next season with higher expectations than this year. I mean, and there's a bit of pressure now on Steven Gerrard, on the players, on the board now as well, to supply them with the funds to add the quality to the team that's obviously we've been missing quite often this season. And if we can do that, there's absolutely no reason at all why we can't bring the silverware home next season. And I think we've really got to do that. And I think the honeymoon period is now over for Gerrard. I think he's done well, and I think most Rangers fans are happy with his efforts and the rest of his coaching team. But now the pressure's on him next season to really deliver something, whether that's a trophy of some sort, or much preferably than anything else, the league title. And I think to do that, we've got to be a lot more consistent. We've got to start the season really well, including Europe. We'll have another 3 or 4 qualifiers again for that. So, it's ultimately, I think it's not. Can't call it a successful year. It hasn't been. There's been too many disappointments for that. However, we have made progress, and it's up to the manager and his players to take us on to better things next season.
Ross, what about you? Would you agree with Stuart there on his sort of summarisation of the season?
So I think I'd actually be a wee bit more positive, to be honest. I think it's a shame that Stevie Clifford couldn't join us tonight from Four Lads Had a Dream, because their most recent blog, I think, kind of hits the nail on the head, and the way that they sum up their view of the season. And if you look at the brief that was given to Gerrard at the start of the year, you'd be looking at things like close the gap and improve the performance domestically in the league. Well, I think it's fair to say that that's been done, both if you look at the stats and you look at the league table, obviously cementing second place, which we haven't been able to do the last couple of years, reducing the points difference. Obviously, then there was another target, which was to beat Celtic in the league again, which we've done twice. So I think we've kind of met the targets in that respect, and also to improve ourselves and to put Rangers back on the map in terms of European football. And I think we had a very successful European campaign, which was only ended by kind of a very marginal amount. We were really very, very close to going through, and perhaps should have gone through with better performances against Spartak Moscow. We could have gone through to the knockout stages of the Europa League. Obviously, we're coming home with no silverware, which is a significant disappointment, and something that will need to be improved on next season, because I don't think there will be too... I I think if there's no silverware again next season, then serious questions will be asked of the management team, because that's kind of the standard that Rangers expect. But if you look at what could be expected of a rookie management team, considering the mess that we were left in at the tail end of last season, there was a really interesting article, possibly 4 to 6 weeks ago, from Jimmy Nicholl, when he mentions how much of a mess Rangers were in at the tail end of last season, and the turnaround that Gerrard and his team have been able to do in the intervening 12 months is quite remarkable. So it's a tough one. Obviously, we're having an overwhelming feeling of disappointment to have no silverware whilst we watch our neighbours across the city winning their treble, which is obviously a bitter pill and a difficult one to take. But I think you have to be a little bit more granular and look at the detail, and there's certainly reasons to be optimistic.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with most of that. I think there's been ups and downs throughout the whole season, but I think overall the direction of traffic is definitely going in the right direction. I don't think there's any doubt about that. A couple of sore ones which we'll go on to cover later on in the show, but overall I agree with sort of both your summarisations there. I think Rangers are heading the right direction under Steven Gerrard. Graham, obviously about a year ago Stevie G was appointed. It was just over a year ago, and there was a lot of anticipation. But I think maybe a few of us forgot that he was although he'd been doing a job with the sort of youths at Liverpool, this was his first managerial position, and I think sometimes we forget that. Overall, how would you rate Gerrard, his performance throughout the season?
How would I rate him? He's just a young, ambitious manager with his first job in professional football. I think he's done a reasonable job with the resources that he's had. I mean, we'll talk about Pedro Caixinha, the tail end of the season before. He left them with not much, and he managed to salvage at least something out of that and take us on to look quite competitive. It's sad and quite disappointing for a Rangers supporter that we didn't return any silverware. But I don't think that we're down in the dumps about it. We're very positive about it, to be honest with you. So I think he's done a reasonable job of what he's had.
Pete, is there anything obvious as far as you can see that he might have got wrong throughout the season? I mean, I think initially the sort of first 8 to 10 weeks of the season, especially when he was doing so well on the continent in the European run, he really sort of lifted the place. But I had one thing that's concerned me about Gerrard is sometimes I think he's just a wee bit too honest about how he's feeling with some of his players at times. And sometimes tactically, there's been a couple of times I thought, I don't know about what he's trying to do there. I think as Stuart pointed out earlier on, I think he got it wrong at Kilmarnock, which was a crucial game. So there has been points throughout the season I think he's made mistakes. Is there anything on that front that stands out for yourself with Steven Gerrard?
Well, I'm the same as everybody. I think we're going in the right direction. But to be honest, I think Gerrard can look in the mirror and say, did I cost Rangers the league this year? Because I think with certain things, his loyalty to Worrell, why Cottage was dropped for so long, I don't know. He had family problems. That's sort of a well-known. But he just kept loyal to Worrell for far too long in my eyes. Kent as well, he kept loyal to him, although we didn't really have a replacement for him. But there was games where Kent was just non-existent, but he managed to keep his place in the team. So I think at the end of the day, I think we're going the right direction, but I really think this was a chance missed this year. And I think part of that is down to Gerrard, unfortunately. So hopefully he's a young manager. I'm certainly a supporter of him. I'm ecstatic that he's still here, and I've certainly no get rid of Gerrard thoughts in my head. But I think he was part of the we could have put up a better fight than we did if Gerrard hadn't been so loyal to certain players.
David, is that maybe David Fraser here? Just so we've got the Davids clear. Is that maybe a point that Pete's making there? That, you know, have we missed a trick here? Have we missed an opportunity? You know, when you consider some of the results, you know, we've spoke about it all through the year. You know, the 3 draws against against Hibs, the draw at home against St Johnstone, the draw away at Dundee, and not to mention the sort of poor results we had against Aberdeen at Ibrox and against Kilmarnock throughout the season. Have we? I mean, also looking at Celtic over the road, Brendan Rodgers left, you know, a couple of months back there. There's always been a wee feeling that things were kind of falling apart a wee bit over there. Have we missed an opportunity here? Was this, if Celtic do get the 10, will this be the year that we look back at and go, that was our opportunity?
Possibly. I think if Stevie, you know, was assessing his performance and his allied to the squad's performance over the course of the season, I think he'd probably come to the conclusion that it was an opportunity missed. I think that's a fair comment. Having said that, as you guys have went through, this is a rookie manager. His first managerial position after hanging up his boots, and I mean, he's obviously seen during the course of the season he's living life at the sharp end of football management. Obviously, the Scottish Premier League is not one of the more glamorous or technical leagues in European stroke world football, but it comes with its unique pressures where you've got to win every game. And if you don't win every game, you know, the chances are you're going to open the door to your main rivals, i.e. Celtic. So he's drawn 9 games this season. He's lost too many games, 6 games. I tend to agree with Pete, Colin, to be honest with you. I think there was an opportunity missed. I'm not just so hung up on loyalty to certain players. I just think that over the piece, I think that the squad was possibly a bit lightweight when it came to the mentality of filling the Rangers shirt. Latterly, in the last, since let's say the post-split, some guys, when the pressure's off, have risen to the occasion and accepted more responsibility to such an extent that it would give you greater confidence next season, assuming that we go into the transfer market and make some quality additions to the squad. But I think if we'd maybe, you know, leaving aside possibly dubious refereeing decisions, if we hadn't slipped up at Dens, if we hadn't slipped up at Ibrox against St Johnstone, leaving aside the Hibs matches, and if we'd possibly come away from Parkhead with a point there 6-7 weeks ago, I think the title may well have went right down to the wire, and we may well have come out on top. I agree with what you're saying that Celtic certainly not been at their strongest. We didn't seem to capitalise on the mini crisis I had when Brendan Rodgers jumped ship down to Leicester, and I think maybe in 2-3 years' time, looking back, I think, you know, some members of the Rangers family look back and think we should have maybe done better than what we did there. Certainly where the league's concerned.
Surely there's a certain amount of luck coming into this as well, Stuart. You know, I mean, in the games where we were drawn, you know, the 3 Hibs games that we spoke about, that, you know, the game up at Dens Park, St Johnstone at Ibrox, these really stupid points that we dropped. You know, there was a similar amount of games. I mean, I think since the winter break, I think Celtic have scored like 4 or 5 last minute winners in games. I think 2 were against Kilmarnock, 1 against Hearts. You know, and those are the, you know, does that know the fine lines sometimes that just, although there's been errors that have been pointed out by some of the guys there in Gerrard's team selection, by some of the players, but sometimes the rub of the green just goes against you. You know, in games where Celtic looked like they were dropping points right at the last death, they pulled a winner out their arse on 4 or 5 occasions that eventually, you know, made the difference. The one that they were 9 points ahead of us, I think they were easily secured 8 points out of last minute winners.
Aye, there is an argument to that. I mean, I think you've got to say that you make your own luck, though. I mean, if games last 90 minutes, or well, usually 93, 94 minutes, so I think you've got to play play the whole of that time period. And it's easy to say, well, they scored last minute winners. I think we scored quite a lot of goals in the first 15 minutes of the season, so and we still didn't manage to secure the points in some of these instances, unfortunately. Generally, though, I mean, I think the argument that we should have won the league is probably stretching things a bit too much. I think there was definitely an opportunity. There's no doubt about that. I mean, if you go back to the 29th of December after we've beaten them, I mean, I think we're top of the league on goal difference, aren't we? I think the problem was, I think there was probably too many at the club, maybe the fans included, seeing this as a transitional year. I mean, it's Gerrard's first sort of full-time, well, in terms of the first, managing a first team squad, it's his first season doing that. So obviously the player turnaround was really high. So I don't think anybody, probably Gerrard included, thought we could win the league this year. And it probably wasn't until the 29th of December they thought, oh, wait a minute, maybe we do have a chance. And I mean, I think that's probably why we went and signed Davis and Defoe. I think latterly, certainly the two of them have both shown that they're still quality players. Unfortunately, they both arrived unfit, or certainly not match sharp, and we didn't get the best of them until after they'd been here for a couple of months. And that, more than anything else, probably did cost us a real tilt at it. It's tough because, and it is frustrating because there was a chance. And I don't blame Andy for seeing it as an opportunity missed. But for me, I think there's too many positives for the season to concentrate on what is a fair enough negative. I think we've just got to be optimistic and feel and hope that Gerrard and his management team have learnt from the downsides of this season and will take that experience into next year, and they'll have that belief and that mentality instilled in all the players that Celtic can be got at. And I mean, I'm not frightened by Neil Lennon as their manager. Will they be throwing millions of pounds at their squad with what's happening with their separate entity stuff? I'm not so sure. So there's an even bigger chance for us to win the league next season, and I think we've just got to look ahead to that now.
Ross, we spoke about sort of mentality a few times over the season on the pod. You know, in the games that we spoke about there, players would just didn't have that winning mentality to find a way to win, you know, to get the team over the line. Does that point to a sort of, you know, the strength and depth of the squad? You know, I feel when Rangers have got what you would consider the best 11 on the park, we tend to win the game. It's when maybe because we've sort of dipped into the squad a little bit in games against Livingston, at St Johnstone at home, Dundee away. Does that show that once you go beyond the sort of core 12 or 13 boys, there's not the sort of quality of player there, not that type of player that has that mentality to help get the team over the line?
The mentality question is a really interesting one, because I think it's incredibly difficult to scout this properly, and to get a real sense of people's character, people's mentality, people's kind of mental strength before they sign for the club. And you have to consider, you know, the markets that we're able to shop in. We're not signing players, you know, first team regular starters from Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Man City, or Juventus, Bayern, Real Madrid, where there's kind of the expectation that you'll find at Rangers, where you're expected to win every game, where you've got a hostile crowd. So a lot of the players that we'll sign will be coming from clubs that have a slightly different set of pressures placed on the players. And we've seen that borne out over the last few seasons with a couple of different transfer strategies. And if we think back to Mark Warburton's time in charge, which started so well in the Championship because of the lower standard of football, we did a lot of shopping in the lower leagues of England, and kind of players with bright potential and bright futures that kind of burnt out or lost their way a wee bit. And the vast majority of them couldn't cope with the mental challenge of playing for Rangers. James Tavernier being the very obvious exception, who's gone on to have a fantastic career at Rangers, and I'm sure we're going to talk about him a lot later on in the podcast. So then we kind of fast forward to where we are today, and if you take the signings of, for example, Niko Katic and Borna Barisic coming in from Croatia, it's again interesting because we're shopping in an unknown market where the players are playing, in front of much smaller crowds with much lesser expectations. And so to then import them into the Rangers' way of life and the Rangers' expectations, the Rangers' pressures is very, very difficult. And we don't really know how they're going to react to that. And that's the gamble that we have to take because of the circumstances that we're in, because of the finances, because of the league that we play in, the kind of caliber of player that we can attract. Is we're always going to be taking a gamble on the mental resilience of the players that we can sign. Particularly when we start looking a little bit further afield and we can't do as much due diligence on them. It's a really difficult one, and it's kind of a unique problem to clubs such as Rangers, where there's that higher expectation that we have to go that little bit further in our due diligence. And I think it's a really tough job, but it is. I completely agree with you, Colin. It is something that's let us down at times over the course of this season. Is the resilience, is the fortitude, and we've seen. For example, we go back to the Kilmarnock game that we referenced earlier, the Kilmarnock game back in February, where Joe Worrell gave the ball away, made one simple mistake, and the whole team kind of seemed to crumble. Again, like you say, we freshen up the squad and use some fringe players against teams like Livingston, and they present a stronger challenge than we were expecting, and the team can't rise to it. That does suggest that there are some characters in the squad that are struggling to adapt to the pressures of playing for Rangers. However, on the other hand, I think you can also argue that there are players who certainly can kind of match that level of expectation, can bear the pressure, can bear the weight of the jersey. Players such as Andy Halliday obviously has shown that in the past, but also players such as John Flanagan, I think, has kind of shown that he can take knocks and come back from it. So it's a difficult one, but it's unique to Rangers. In this league, and obviously we're dictated by where we can afford to buy players from, and that's why it's so hard to get that mental side of the scouting right.
Can I just come in there, Colin?
You can absolutely come in, Graham.
There seems to be a little bit of a myth developing about just after the winter break with Rangers, that we had a really bad period, February, March, which is true. We weren't excellent. However, if you look at both halves of that season, in the first half of the season, we lost 3, we drew 6, and we won 12. And then after the winter break, we lost 3, drew 3, and won 11. So the stats don't bear it out. That's kind of all I wanted to say.
Yeah, but is the issue not maybe? I think the issue is the fact. I think the game on December the 29th has a huge bearing on how people view the second half of the season, particularly sort of February, March time, because we beat Celtic. We're level in points for them after that game, albeit they've got a game in hand. So essentially, they're 3 points clear if they win their game in hand. We do well in the transfer window. We bring in Defoe, we bring in Davis, 2 quality signings, a bit of a statement, and we don't really kick on for that. So I get what you're saying about the stats not bearing out, but I think a lot of it comes from the fact that we put ourselves in quite a strong position at the halfway mark of the season. And then within 6 weeks...
I think the Kilmarnock result that you're talking about, the 2-1 away to Kilmarnock, I think that one had a larger effect on the mentality of the players rather than the actual results we're showing.
Maybe, yeah. I think when we look back in the season, that Kilmarnock game was a key game. You know what I mean? And maybe... maybe Stuart's got a point in saying that the Cowdenbeath game being postponed gave us a small issue because we were coming into it with no competitive action behind us. But I think, as Ross pointed out, the minute Joe Worrell made that mistake and we conceded the equaliser, you could see the team wilting under the pressure and the expectation. Up until that point, we dominated. We probably should have been more than 1-0 up. And then one simple mistake from Joe Worrell, Kilmarnock get the equaliser, and then for then on in, it was a different game. Rangers didn't look like they were up for it. So, I get what you're hearing. I get what you're saying, but I do think that's why people are viewing it that way, because we'd got ourselves in such a strong position after a fairly indifferent first half of the season, domestically anyway. I think another thing that bears out the sort of mentality issue is the fact that we played so well in Europe. I know a club like Rangers are expected to play in Europe, but there's not much in terms of expectation. there, I don't think. And I think players played in that environment with a certain amount of freedom, knowing that there was no real expectation. They played in a way that they didn't always play domestically, because once the pressure started, you could see players sort of shrinking away from it. I think we should introduce. We've got a new guest on the show tonight. John's joined us. John McCallum, how you doing, John?
I'm not too bad. Yourself?
Aye, better late than never, eh?
Well, some things you have to wait for. The good things in life.
Yeah. You're just
and some things are just late.
If I was Steven Gerrard and you were a player, I'd be saying to you, you're just in time for a shower, mate. Well done.
Is that when you got offered the Celtic job?
That's where I got offered the Celtic job, in the showers. Yeah, we'll not even go into that. I should also mention, guys, I should have mentioned this at the start of the show. We're live on the YouTube. The comment section is open. I'm seeing quite a few comments. Noticed a name that I recognise for the past, Stephen Lermont. Hello, Stephen. How you doing? Me and Stephen used to go to the games together on the Camelon bus back in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, when we both had the sort of bleached, streaked hair and all the rest of it. So a big hi to Stephen. I think maybe time to hand over to you now, Ross. Is it not your turn to take over the running of the ship?
Aye, now that we're past the watershed, the fun can really start. Aye, listen, I think what we'll do is, because there's so many of us on the show tonight, and we're kind of just having a wee end of season wrap up. If it's all right with you guys, I think what we'll do is we'll try and get things moving a wee bit quicker and just fire through some quick questions and quick answers. I noticed that on the Gersnet forum, throughout the week, we've been talking about who was your player of the season, and there's some really interesting debates to be had around there. So I'm going to ask you all dead quick. Pete, I'll start with you. Who was your player of the season?
Well, I voted for Morelos. I think anybody that scores as many goals as he does has to be up there for player of the season. Tavernier, you can make a choice for him as well, but I just think that Morelos, although he cost us a few games as well, the amount of times that he actually won us the games was more than Tavernier did, who scored a lot of goals when it wasn't really important times. So I think Morelos won his games in more important times. So I went for Morelos.
Frankie, would you agree with that?
No. If you'd asked me probably 2 or 3 months ago, I'd have said Morelos, no question, and no doubt about it at all. And the lad deserves credit for what was a fantastic season for him over the piece. Unfortunately, he let us down too often. He was unlucky with the referees. I think there's no doubt about the lad that gets refereed to a different standard than any other player in Scottish football. In that sense, I've got a lot of sympathy. But I think James Tavernier was my player of the year. His contributions in terms of goals, in terms of penalties, in terms of assists is fantastic, and he played almost every single of our 60 matches. And I think the lad's improved no end. He's getting better. I think he's a great captain, and I really hope that he can stay for next season.
Aye, and I guess that's the big unanswered question at the moment is where does James Tavernier's future lie? John, how about yourself? Please tell me you're about to make the case for Eros Grezda for player of the season.
I think Eros Grezda makes the case himself. I don't think he needs me to help him. No, you're all wrong on player of the season. The player of the season is Connor Goldson. It would have been McGregor up until towards the end of the season, but no, Goldson's whole season, you have to look at it from the start to the very end. He played almost every game. He certainly played every game that mattered. He turned a defence that has been leaking goals, that's been an Achilles heel since we came back up, into one of the meanest in the league. He's the guy. He's the guy completely overlooked. Everyone just takes him for granted, and he's the guy that he's the fulcrum of that side. I just wanted to use the word fulcrum in this. But he's the fulcrum of that side. He is what that team is being built around. I think he's the guy we need to keep.
I know. I have to admit, it's bold of you to show up 30 minutes late and then immediately pronounce everyone else as being wrong. But I admire the chops on you, John.
Hey, listen, this is the last one of the season. I could be getting let off through the middle. You know, we all know that. I might not be invited back. I could be playing juniors this time next year. Get out with a bang.
Decorating alongside Ian Black. Graham, we'll come to you. We've had three different players being voted for so far, which is making it dead tough for me trying to keep track. Who is your player of the season?
Well, I think John's got a fair shout there with Connor Goldson. I mean, he only played, 15 games the season prior to joining Rangers after his major heart surgery and operation. So the amount of games that he's put in this year, that's a fair shout. However, for me, it's got to be James Tavernier. The man's played 57 games this season out of 60, one sub-appearance. He's up there with the likes of Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo as far as goals and assists are concerned. In fact, he shares 10th place with Pablo Sarabia, I think his name. He plays for Sevilla. So yeah, he's my man. He's my player of the season.
Fantastic. That's 2 votes for Tav, 1 for Goldson and 1 for Morelos so far. David, enlighten us. Who's your player of the season?
James Tavernier. I think all the guys that were mentioned in the poll on the forum during the week, I think they're all worthy of mention. I think John's got a good shout for Connor Goldson. Tremendous longevity. Tightened up the defence, but I don't think you can overlook Tav's part in tightening up the goals against call. Alan McGregor, very good. Ryan Jack, very good. Alfie, obviously very good as well. But for me, in terms of his overall improvement, I said a couple of pods ago, I think he's really starting to look the part. I think James Tavernier, for me, would be the Rangers player of the season.
You make a very convincing argument. Last but not least, Colin, how do you come down on this side of the argument? James Tavernier, someone else, Morelos perhaps?
I'm going the other way. I should say that I think John's made a good point with Connor Goldson being overlooked. That means I'm the Connor Goldson of the Gersnet Podcast. No, totally undervalued and underappreciated. But there we go. I'm going to go with
consistency, mate. You need to be more consistent in front of goal.
Yeah, this is true. I'm not very consistent. I accept that criticism. I'm going to go with Scott Arfield. It took me a wee while to get around to him, but I think what he's added to the Rangers team this season is considerable, and he's came on even more since he's sort of found that new position one further up when Morelos was suspended and we started going with Defoe. I feel for Morelos in terms of I do think there's a narrative that's been sort of put up around about him that means, as Stuart said, he is getting refereed to a different standard, but also I think he takes the bait far too easily. The one against Scott Brown, don't get me wrong, I don't think he touched him. I think Brown made the most of it, but he gave the referee something to react to, you know what I mean? Something like that. I think it was John that made the point on the night of the game that why did he not just go down? You know, the minute Scott Brown rakes his studs down the back, he's Achilles. Why does he not just go down? Why does he not give the referee another decision to make? But instead, he's too reactionary. So for that reason, I can't give it to Morelos. I like Tav as well. You know, his goals and assists are great. His defensive side's still ropey at times, I think. Positionally, I think he came in the wrong place at times, but certainly improved this season. But just for what he's added to the side, I've got to go with Scotty Arfield. Plus, he's got the best celebration with that wee salute thing. I love that.
No. Right. I was with you up until that last bit. I cannot stand, actually coming from you, Colin, someone who spends his entire life on Twitter slating modern football, saying how football was better back when I was a kid in the 40s. Right.
Oh!
Listen.
Oh dear.
Cannot get bored with a pre-planned celebration like that. A goal you should be like a Vincent Kompany running around or going off your head, delighted that you scored a goal. No, you shouldn't have the composure to stand and salute. But that's just me. I think, to be fair, we've all got strong arguments for who could be player of the season. Actually, Scott Arfield, I think, has had a fantastic second half of the season. And actually, even in the first half of the season, you kind of noticed him by his absence sometimes. In the games that he wasn't playing, you could see we were less of a unit and less of an attacking threat. But for me, I've got to agree with the majority and say James Tavernier has had his best season in a Rangers strip. He's grown into the role of captain. He's made that kind of attacking fullback role his own, and really kind of introduced that into Scottish football in a way that hadn't quite been done so far. I think he's been an absolute revelation this season, and I really, really do hope he's here next season, which is great because it shows that here on the Gersnet Podcast, we've agreed with the Gersnet Forum. It's all tying together very nicely. Moving on very briefly, we're going to then talk about goal of the season if we can. I think I'm right in saying that it was officially given to Ryan Jack for his goal against Celtic back in December. Pete, what are your thoughts on goal of the season? Is that the right one, or do you think there was a better goal?
I don't know. I'm really that bad at remembering goals that I can't really place one that I think, oh, that was a fantastic goal this year. But obviously, for me, any goal against Celtic is a good one. I seem to remember one with a brilliant move from the back of defence to the right through the midfield and put it in. But I'm hopeless at remembering goals, so I'll actually pass on this one, I'm afraid.
Right, I'll just put you down for the goal that started at the back, went through the middle, and ended it in the back.
That's it. That's the one.
That was a belter. Frankie, how about yourself? Do you agree with Pete?
There has been a few of them, but I've got a specific one that I'll go for. The Morelos second goal in the Rapid Vienna game. It was fantastic. It was the atmosphere at that game was amazing, and it was just like the cherry on the top of the cake was just was that finish. I mean, Candias obviously won the ball, cleared it in his own box, and then ran 30-40 yards to challenge a guy in the halfway line, and then the back heel was immense. You'd probably try that back heel another 100 times and not get it as perfect as what he did into Morelos' stride. So I'll go with that goal, just as to be a bit different.
I know it's a fair comment. I remember that moment so clearly, sitting here watching that, and just the excitement and kind of seeing it all happen in slow motion, and then crying out for Morelos to square it, I think, to Halliday, who was following him. But I mean, what a goal and what a moment that was. And it kind of, for me, that signalled our return to Europe, and that was a really special night. John, yourself, goal of the season?
Well, Frankie wasn't going against it because that was absolutely going to be my goal of the season as well, and it was my favourite match. But I think the goal, because Frankie's taken that one, I'm going to go for one of the goals at Villarreal. I think the equalising goal at the second equalising goal at Villarreal, I think that was probably my second favourite. I think it was to do with the occasion. It was a good goal. It was a nice move, but I think it was as much to do with the occasion. Back in European football, playing at Villarreal, a side we were familiar with, a decent Spanish side, and here we were, giving them a proper game, going toe to toe. They were a better side than us, but we ended up coming away with a draw. And I think that was the kind of realization that this is a different Rangers. This is the old Rangers back. The stuff that's gone over the last few seasons, that's definitely been consigned. Because I don't think I was convinced until that game that we were a different team. There was something about us this season. So yeah, I'd say either of those two goals. But I'm only saying that because Frankie stole my Rapid Vienna story.
I know. Thanks for at least trying to keep it original. Graham, how about yourself?
Well, I'm a bit undecided about this one, Ross, to be absolutely honest with you. There's been some great team goals. Scotty Arfield's for the second against Celtic at Ibrox was a thing of beauty. However, I'm going to go with Alfredo Morelos' backheel flick against Hearts. An unbeaten Hearts at that. That's my number one. It's one of the best goals I've seen at Ibrox in a long time.
I have to say that was going to be my choice as well, Graham. Because you're right, people will forget, obviously people will remember the goal, people will remember the flick, the kind of audacity of it, but people will forget that Hearts were unbeaten at that point in the season. Hearts were looking like an actual, strong, dominant force in Scottish football for a while there.
And also, Daniel Candeas, he closes down the Mitchell, I think his name is, in the box, more or less done the exact same thing as he did against Rapid Vienna.
Aye.
Chases it down, puts it in, Morelos, bang, back heel. You can't get any better than that.
Perfect. And something that Daniel Candeas does, over and over again is chase these balls, which is why I think he's an absolute superstar. Moving on, David, how about yourself, goal of the season?
All the guys have mentioned goals that I would immediately come to mind. couple of other ones, possibly Scott Arfield's goal against Motherwell at Fir Park, just before the split. It's a good team goal. I think Alfie's cute left side foot into the bottom right-hand corner at Pittodrie in February was a tidy goal. But I think for overall passion and feeling on the part of, I think Scotty Arfield's goal against Celtic there a couple of weeks back was probably up there. Ross, there's a few cracking team goals. The Alfie's back heel, I was going to mention that, but Graham got in before me. But there's no real kind of big screamers and such like, but there's some cracking goals, and I think you could pick any one of the goals that the guys have mentioned, to be perfectly honest.
Very diplomatic of you, David. Finally, Colin, how about yourself?
Well, I'm going to go with something a bit different. I think the Morelos goal at Pittodrie was worth mentioning. I thought that was a great goal. Arfield's goal against Celtic was also a good one. Morelos against Hearts, a great one. I'm going to go with Candias against Spartak Moscow. I think he scored the second that night, and it was a sort of a ball played for the sort of right back channel, right down the middle, and he sort of had his back to goal, brought it down, sort of back heeled it and turned in one move and hit it into the bottom corner. I thought that was technically a very, very good goal. So just to be slightly different, I would go with Candias' goal at Spartak that night.
Right, just playing devil's advocate, Colin, do you think he meant it, that control?
I was just watching it there on my phone to get my idea about how good a goal it was, and I think he does get a wee bit lucky. I think when he brings it down, it sort of bounces just right from him. But I mean, he's still done it, and to do it all in one movement and on a European stage, I'll give him that. I think the goal I enjoyed the most was probably Arfield's a couple of weeks ago. I mean, the sort of wee work, the lovely bit of skill from Kamara, which done Brown twice. Brown had to buy a ticket to get back into the ground. The pass to Defoe, the lovely dummy for Defoe. You know what I mean? Just it really was a really, really good goal, and that's probably the goal I enjoyed the most at Ibrox, slightly ahead of Morelos' goal against Rapid Vienna that night. But I'm going to go with Candias.
Well, to be honest, I'm glad that we've got a good variety of goals there. And
Ross, I think the goal that I get the most excitation from was Jacks, against Celtic on the 29th of December. I think just the way it went into the net and the whole stadium going alive. I think it wasn't a great goal, but it was just absolutely fantastic, because it probably put us in our way to beating Celtic not for the first time in years, but in a time that Celtic didn't think we could beat them.
It was certainly a very meaningful moment, and you could see actually that it meant a lot to Ryan Jack, and that was a huge moment. I was watching that with my dad I was back in England at the time watching that, and it was huge for just for the pair of us to watch that together, and I think that was a really cathartic moment for every Rangers fan, watching that ball go in and then watching us hold on and close out that game was a really meaningful moment and a really defining moment. I think not just in the course of this season, but kind of in the course of the balance of power in Glasgow over the next few seasons. I think we'll look back on the 29th of December 2018 as a really, really significant time. Right, guys, I want to try and get through one more of these quick fire questions. Pete, we'll start with you. Can you give me, if you can, if your memory will allow, your kind of personal highlight of the 2018-2019 season? What was your personal favourite moment of this season?
Personal moment. I think I was at the game on the 29th of December, so I think winning that game was a highlight of the season for me, because I was part of it. The crowd was absolutely fantastic, and the stadium was just jumping, and I loved that. That was a high point of the season for me.
Pete, how many games did you get across for this year?
Well, I was across for the Celtic game, and I was across, unfortunately, for the Kilmarnock game at the end up there. So that was, and that I'm going to say that as well. I went with the Blues Brothers bus from the Roseville pub in Partick, and all the guys on there were saying as well, and blaming Gerrard a bit as well for the turn up that day, because the guys, the supporters were still paying £27 a ticket to £30 a ticket, and Rangers team just didn't turn up. And there was a lot of people quite angry at that. And I think Gerrard leaving half the players at home, or not half the players, but a lot of the better players at home, that really got under the skin of quite a lot of people.
Fair comment. It's not quite where I was expecting to go when we were talking about personal highlights of the year, but fair enough. Frankie, yourself, what was your kind of personal favourite moment of the season just gone?
I think you summed it up quite well 5 or 6 minutes ago, Ross, when you were talking about the sort of cathartic nature of the game on the 29th, when we beat them 1-0 and really sort of put down a marker and says that we were capable of doing it again. And I think for me, it would be that. But I think to take the next step and actually beat them again, and probably even more convincingly, just a few weeks ago in the 2-0 game is my favourite moment. When that second goal went in, that sort of pressure lifted off you, and you could see that we're going to. We still had 20 minutes to go in that game, but you could see we were going to. If anything, we should have scored more, and it's that positive nature of that and beating them twice in the one season, and certainly on aggregate over the 4 games is just to take that huge positive. And it's a defining moment for me, and it should be for the players and for the manager and for the rest of the fans, to show that we can start winning big games like that, and can start winning silverware if we can do it in every game. So I'm kind of hoping that moment is something that we can all take from this season as a highlight.
I think we should remember that we dominated them at Parkhead in the second half as well with 10 men.
Yeah, I think we absolutely should, until, unfortunately, as we've mentioned before, individual errors cost us, and that's possibly been the difference between us and them this season is the individual mistakes. It's what I like about the 2 victories against Celtic this season is that they weren't just lucky victories, they weren't flukes, they weren't standalone freak events. They give us real hope, real kind of positive momentum going into next season, that there is no real gap to be bridged anymore. We've made so much progress, and let's be fair, they've had a bit of a backslide from where they were 2 or 3 seasons ago. So it's not that these were lucky results, and just over the course of 90 minutes, you can actually see in those moments the balance of power shifting, and that's what's so exciting after so many long, hard years of being a Rangers fan. John, how about yourself? What was your favourite moment of this season?
I like the goal. It was Rapid Vienna. I absolutely loved that match. That see, for somebody my age, somebody who can see 50 just coming over the horizon there. Rapid Vienna are a side I remember from growing up. They were a side that were always in Europe. They were always a good side, and so playing them again, for me, that was part of our road back. Playing that side, that type of side again. And I accept that, Austrian football is not at a great standard. I accept that Rapid Vienna aren't even the best team in Austria these days. But there was a sense of nostalgia for me. And the game itself turned out to be a cracker. It was a really exciting game, with that fantastic winning goal. But it was a proper game of football. They brought a decent support. It was one of those nights where Ibrox was electric. There was this expectation. And you went into the game, genuinely not knowing how this is going to go. Are we going to get gubbed here? Is this going to be like some of these horrible European games you've seen Rangers in over the years, where we just get picked off by guys who are just technically better than us? We didn't. And for me, that was a turning point in the season, a personal turning point. That was the moment I thought, no, this is a different Rangers team. I think, as I said last week, I wasn't 100% sure of Gerrard's appointment. I was a doubter. A guy with no experience, I was not sure, and that was the game he won me over. That was the game that made me realise, no, there's something about this team. This team has got a chance. So that was my highlight. The highlight of my season. Beating Celtic's always great, but that was the moment. That was the moment for me. Was the Rapid Vienna match.
Aye, spot on. It was a really wonderful night, and I think we kind of turned a lot of heads in European football that night. A lot of people who had perhaps forgotten about Rangers over the past 6 or 7 years. I think that was the night that people kind of sat up and took a wee bit of notice of us again, which is huge, and it was a really special night. Graham, coming to you next, what was your favourite moment of the season?
My favourite moment of the season is Ryan Jack's goal against Celtic at Ibrox on 29th of December. It's a real Randy Quaid and Independence Day type of goal that it's announcing, hello boys, we're back. That'll do for me.
Succinct and referencing Randy Quaid, I absolutely. You can come back on. Why are you always sitting behind the knobs there, right? You've got quality input to bring here, Graham.
Don't you be talking about my knobs online.
Aye, I know, I was thinking that, aye.
God, I tell you, past the watershed, we can get away with what we like. Also, there's a big gap coming up at the end of the season.
Although, I can contrast it with my low point. My low point was meeting the guys on the 24th of November for a pint before the Livingston game.
Settle down.
You know what I mean? He was doing so well there, Ross, and then he's just pissed all over it.
I know. I was gonna reference that as my high point of the season, saying, walking into the Wetherspoons in George Square, seeing the friendly faces, and then seeing you miserable bastards at the next table. Right, David, how about you? Your high point of the season just gone.
I'm going to go against the tide here slightly. My highlight of the season didn't actually come during the season. My highlight of the season is the appointment of Steven Gerrard. I think if Steven Gerrard's not appointed, I think all the kind of high points that we're talking about could be purely academic. I think if we were still banging our heads against a brick wall with kind of low-profile managers like Pedro Caixinha, I think we could still be seriously scratching our heads about what we're going to do to try and arrest this kind of Celtic dominance. But I think we've got the right man in charge. I think he's made a few mistakes, showed how inexperienced he is. He's been over the course of the season. I think he's shown latterly that he's learning. His backroom staff are learning. They've obviously they've had 12 months to get used to the Scottish football environment, and I've got every faith that the guy will deliver and he will secure his 55. And I'm pretty certain it will be next season, Ross.
I think that's a smashing answer, David. I think it's interesting how much optimism has been brought in, and it's the way that he has kind of silenced the doubters. Like John said there, he was a doubter of Gerrard's appointment, and I think he's addressed those doubts in the best possible way. And he's no perfect, and he's unpolished perhaps as a manager, but the gravity that he brings, the commitment that you can see that he brings, and the determination, the drive, it's turning out to be what looks like a wonderful appointment. And I'm with you, David. I really do share your confidence that this is the start of something really special. And this season will be looked back upon perhaps as missed opportunities and disappointments around mental fortitude, as we've spoken about. Obviously, consistency is the key word of the season, but I think that's a smashing answer, David. Colin, last but not least, of course, will come to you. Your high point of the season.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with John. I really enjoyed Rapid Vienna at Ibrox for a number of reasons. We hadn't been at that level, European football, for a while, and I think mostly because my boy hadn't seen that sort of night at Ibrox. He'd sort of started going to the games when we were in the lower leagues, and didn't really see Rangers, or he hadn't experienced Rangers as being what they really are and what they should be. So that night was good. When the third went in, it was actually quite emotional. It did kind of feel like what John was saying, that we'd got our club back, and yeah, that was a special night for me, I think.
I think it's a fair point. It was a really special night. Actually, my personal highlight, if you'll just indulge me for a moment, was for me in a similar vein. It was standing on the terraces in Moscow after we travelled out for the Spartak game, and just being there and looking around and thinking, we're back. We're back. And listen, I'm 27 now. I was 26 back at the time we played Moscow, and I was never really old enough to go to the European away days 10, 15 years ago. So this for me was my first big trip away. And to have that this season, after all we've been through in the past 6 or 7 years, to be able to stand there in the terraces in Moscow and look around and think, we're back. That was it. That was it for me. That was the moment. Gents, I noticed that we've ticked over the hour mark, and I think we could talk all night about our thoughts about the season just gone and where we're getting to the season ahead. I'm conscious of the time, and I think it's probably best that we wrap up. I'd like to thank, obviously, every guest that we've had on the show this evening. So thank you, of course, to David Fraser, to Frankie, to Graham, to John, to Pete, and of course a big thank you to Colin for opening up the show as well. And also a huge thanks has to be said to all the other guests that we've had on across the series, to Christine Somerville, to Stevie Clifford as well. If I've missed anyone, I certainly do apologise for that. And the biggest thank you, of course, goes to the listeners. I'm sure, Colin, you'll agree that it's been a fantastic season to be hosting the Gersnet Podcast yet again, and we'll be back stronger next season, which we'll be really very much looking forward to. Of course, if you've enjoyed the show, it's always worth heading over to the Gersnet website, www.gersnet.co.uk. Check out all the fantastic articles that are written there. You can also find every single member of this podcast on the lively discussion forum over at Gersnet. So please do check it out, get involved. Let us know your thoughts. If it's your first time listening to the podcast, welcome along. You can like and subscribe. You'll be the first to hear of anything that's coming over the summer break, and you will have every new episode delivered straight to wherever you get your podcast from. So please do leave us a wee review, spread the word. Obviously, we're a new show, and it really does help to get the message out there. I think all that's left for me to say is thank you very, very much for listening tonight and over the course of the season, and have a wonderful summer.